All right, so without further ado, let's start this webinar. Welcome once again. This Local Leadership Academy, the Local Leadership Academy or LLA webinar is designed to foster greater exchange of ideas, promote innovative approaches, and also strengthen the network. This is a space where we as a network can learn from our members and also our partners on their good practices and experiences in addressing challenges around DRR issues. And yeah, just recently, GNDR has published a new analysis report on the state of early warning system and anticipatory actions. We got responses from more than 400 civil society organizations across 88 countries, and the global survey data state that strengthening early warning system and anticipatory actions required a localized, inclusive, and technology-driven approach. While there is a growing recognition of the importance of community-led early warning system, significant challenges persist, including limited participations of marginalized groups, inconsistent communications, funding constraints, weak infrastructures, and also fragmented policy coordinations. In our today's sessions, we will hear from members and also partners on the importance of indigenous and local knowledge in early warning and early actions, and how to integrate indigenous and local knowledge with modern technologies or scientific forecasting. So in our agenda today, we will have the first one we'll hear from Vladislav Kavalevsky, from Global Disaster Preparedness Center. So Vladislav is the Research and Knowledge Management Program Manager at the AFRD Global Disaster Preparedness Centers, or GDPC, where he leads efforts to make disaster preparedness knowledge, research, and tools more accessible and actionable for practitioners. The GDPC serves as a hub for research, innovations, and coordinations within the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, and the broader humanitarian sectors. Vlad has previously worked with organizations such as the World Bank and UNDP at both national and international level, with a focus on areas like climate adaptations, energy, and disaster resilience. And today, Vlad will take us through the indigenous and local knowledge system in early warning systems. So that will be the first part. And after that, we will hear from speakers from different regions. The first one, we will hear from Carina Fearnley from UCL, University College London, that will share about the wisdom for early actions and anticipations, observing the volcano world. And then we have the second speaker from Mayford Luneta from Center for Disaster Preparedness, Philippines, on the effective community-based early warning system, considering the FRIES. And then we have Zeynep Sanduvac from Nirengi, Dernegi, Turkey, that will share on forecast to folklore, bridging science and local wisdom in Turkey's early warning systems. And the next speaker will be Maksudur Rahman from Bangladesh Environment and Development Society, that will share on innovative approach for localizing early warning system, case study of Sunderban's Eco Village. And for the next speaker, we will have Dr. Kaka Nadiradze, Association for Farmer Right Defense, Georgia, that will share on the integrating scientific tools with traditional knowledge system in community-based early warning and preparedness initiative, particularly in mountainous and drought-prone regions. And then we will have panel discussions that will be led by Kevin White from Risk Informed Early Actions Partnership, or RIP, and followed with questions and answers from the participants. And then we will have reflections from GNDR Global Report on Localized and Early Warning by Sivangi Chavda, our program head, and vote of thanks from our Executive Director, Marcos Concepcion Raba. All right, so yeah, let's start our sessions. I will invite Vlad to give us the context on indigenous and local knowledge in early warning systems. Vlad, the time is yours.
Thank you so much. And, I'm really glad to be here. It's really impressive big crowd. So yeah, I'll do a little bit of context setting. So basically talk about why, indigenous and local knowledge is so important for effective early warning. And then, other panelists will touch more on the how to, integrate and how to make it useful. Just to confirm, you see my screen, my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Um, so yeah, just really briefly on GDPC, as Happy said, we are a reference center within the Red Crescent movement where we kind of focus on building capacity and investing in research in innovation, in supporting national societies in everything related to disaster preparedness, which is very inclusive definition that we use that also includes, DRR and climate adaptation, urban resilience, early warning, early action. And I manage our research and learning and knowledge management for portfolio. And with historically, GDPC has been very involved in early warning, early action. We invested a lot in research in this area. We also developed a couple of digital tools that allow to, improve the actionability and accessibility of early warnings. And we also one of the main contributors and developers of the public awareness, public education messages. And that's just again a little bit of background on GDPC and what we do when it comes to early warning. And last year we had a research initiative where we supported 15 research projects across 14 countries on the issue of inclusivity and accessibility of early warning, early action for last mile communities. And by last mile communities, we mean those communities that are, the hardest to reach and kind of the most under-resourced communities, both geographically but also, socioeconomically. And, the research covered many different, groups from, informal settlements dwellers to, indigenous groups to women in some contexts to persons with disabilities and, a wide range of populations. And we kind of looked specifically at the barriers and also enablers of early warnings for them. So basically, because even in countries that claim that they have multi-hazard early warning systems in place, the reality is that oftentimes communities they do not receive the warnings, or if they receive them, they do not understand them or they can't act on them. So we kind of looked at what are the barriers, that prevent those hard to reach communities in, acting on early warnings, and also what are some of the, solutions and approaches and partnerships that can help improve it. And guess what? One of the most common theme that emerged from those studies was indigenous and traditional knowledge and the important role that it plays in communities. Like most of the studies kind of uncovered that people use and people trust kind of the indigenous practices when it comes to early warnings. And here is kind of like a really short overview table of what kind of emerged from the studies. And we see the whole diversity of different kind of indicators, local indigenous indicators that community members use to forecast and also act on early warnings. It's from animal behavior to different ecological signs to water movement to many other kind of indicators. And it's not only indicators that, but also kind of the studies show like the overall importance of indigenous and local knowledge to also it show the kind of the community members or community networks that they trust most when it comes to disseminating early warnings, and also different, traditional practices, how communities respond to, certain hazards. And some of the findings that obviously that indigenous knowledge remains an active and trusted early warning system for last mile communities. So oftentimes people trust the indigenous kind of and local knowledge and local observations more than national or subnational early warnings, just because the people they're sometimes skeptical of scientific methods, or they trust what they see or what they live through more. Obviously, oftentimes there were cases when early warnings arrived after an event already happened, and which also kind of further erodes trust in formal early warning systems, and people rely on indigenous knowledge. It showed that traditional approaches, they very well positioned to kind of fill the gaps in those formal systems, especially when warnings are delayed or inaccessible or hard to understand for people. But unfortunately, also, those traditional kind of early warning practices, they're at risk of loss because it's usually elders in the community who hold kind of that wisdom, and when they die, a lot of like younger generation, they either move to cities or they kind of are not so invested in that. So also climate change kind of adds additional risk because traditional patterns, like weather patterns that people saw for decades and generations, they often don't hold anymore, and communities sometimes struggle to adapt their practices to kind of the new reality, more extreme and more frequent weather events. And yeah, complementarity potential, we do not use the word integration intentionally, just because integration kind of implies dominance of one system over another, but complementarity, when obviously we cannot rely on just formal or informal early warning practices to kind of complementing both, and using strengths of the both, it is really important to build trust and improve the reach and inclusivity of early warnings. And I don't want to go in too much into the definitions, but when we talk about indigenous knowledge or local knowledge, what do we talk about? And I feel like local knowledge is the most the the most inclusive and kind of all-encompassing term that includes both indigenous and traditional knowledge, and that's that the term that we prefer, indigenous and local knowledge systems. And it's important to kind of note that I've been talking, and when we talk about indigenous knowledge systems, if it often comes down to just the different indicators that people use to observe and forecast weather events. But it's important to understand that indigenous and local knowledge system is more than that. It's not just set of indicators. It's communities' worldviews. It's kind of their understanding of risk, their perception of risk, how they relate to hazard and the land, and kind of one another within the community. So as I said, it's also about cultural protocol for response, different traditional approach, traditional early actions that community take to prepare to certain hazards. It's governance practices, kind of how information and is shared and disseminated within the communities, who is trusted, who is not. It's also ecological memory. It's about the past hazards, and people kind of impression and people memories about those events that impacted their communities. And yeah, and also different community rooted communication channels. Again, as I said, like indigenous and local knowledge systems are really well positioned to fill the gaps in formal early warning systems that where again we saw in our research. Oftentimes people just do not understand the messages that come down from national or subnational level because they're too technical. They use a lot of kind of meteorological jargon that people do not speak, and they're not relevant to their communities. And that's kind of also a little summary of how by leveraging indigenous and local practices, early warning practices, we can fill the gaps in more formal early warning systems. And again, community, there is many examples of how indigenous practices can be used across all four pillars of early warning. For example, when it comes to risk knowledge, participatory risk analysis is kind of one of the strongest and the most telling example when communities are involved in kind of mapping and prioritizing their risks not only based on scientific data, but again on those based on those oral histories from past events and their kind of perception of their risk. Then when it comes to, for example, warning dissemination and communication, also leveraging not only kind of formal and high-tech channels, but also kind of traditional communication channels that exist. It can be, in one community that we worked in Dominica, for example, they use conch shells to, disseminate warnings. In some communities, they use, church bells. So it's really important to kind of also include those dissemination channels when, building kind of, early warning infrastructure. And community early warning systems is one of the greatest examples of how indigenous and local knowledge can be used alongside or complement their formal early warning systems that exist. And and like kind of one of the important steps in establishing community early warning system is basically to map who plays a role in risk communication in response within community, kind of map both formal and informal networks that exist, and figuring out how they can complement each other to improve reach and inclusivity of early warnings. And AFRD has really great guidelines on guides and training packages on community early warning system, which are currently being updated and revamped, and they should be the newer version should be published very soon. So it's a very useful resource to check out if you're interested in this area. And yeah, that's it for me. Sorry for being a little bit rushed, but I just tried to pack very informative presentation in short time. But yeah, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Vlad, to take us through this context setting for this webinar, and it's highlighting the importance of indigenous and also local knowledge in the early warning system. We will not take questions at this moment, but we are requesting participants to post their questions in the Q&A button so that later in the Q&A sessions, we can have the speaker to address the comments or the questions, and or just respond in the Q&A button. Okay, thank you so much once again, Vlad. And for the next, I will invite Carina. Carina Fearnley is a professor. Okay, right, yes. Okay. Yes, Carina Fearnley is a professor of warning and science communications at the Department of Science and Technology Studies, UCL, and also director and founder of the UCL Warning Research Center. Carina is an interdisciplinary researcher focused on how hazard warning system can be made more effective, specifically alert level system. She sits on numerous UK and international policy advisory groups and is involved in a number of warning-related research grants. And today, Carina will share the wisdom for early actions and anticipations in the observing the volcano world. Yeah, so Yeah, Karina, your time is 10 minutes, and then we will later, after all speakers speak, we will have the Q&A sessions. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Happy. And good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be invited to speak on this really valuable topic. What I want to do today is just highlight some of the wisdom that we know around the volcanic communities who work very closely with local communities and what that might look like and what we can take from that. So we know there's this huge early warning for all initiative, but unfortunately, volcanoes aren't a huge part of that program. And what's really interesting is that volcanoes can tell us a lot of really interesting things about anticipatory action, as really exemplified by this lovely cartoon here of this volcano on a psychologist's chair saying, "I just cannot control myself." And what's really interesting about volcanoes, as I'm sure many of you know, is that they create multiple hazards at the same time, cascading events, and they are really quite complicated. We actually don't even know where most active volcanoes are. I mean, we know that 10% of the world's volcanoes are active, but actually every now and then some random mountain will turn out to be a volcano, and that can be very challenging in terms of the management of it. So we know that early warning, early action is a huge initiative at the moment that's really focusing the minds of many in terms of thinking about how we can not only just prepare, but really think about that anticipatory action. And that kind of also feeds back into disaster risk reduction. And what's really fascinating is that if we think about warning systems can be classified in different ways. And so we typically think about warnings as we see on the right here with a tsunami, where we might have an earthquake that generates a tsunami, and we have 20 minutes, maybe 20 hours in terms of warnings. And then on the left-hand side, you can see we have those permanent structures in place that are monitoring, whether that's satellite imagery doing Earth observations, or that's like a barrier or a flood defense or something like that. But in the middle, we have this really tricky thing, the anticipatory. And this is a really, really hard warning system to deal with, because it really has to involve the community. Because basically what you're asking people to do is to take action when there's not a huge amount of uncertainty about what's going on. So this is particularly the case with volcanoes. Volcanoes produce a huge amount of hazards, as you can see in this graphic here, ranging from lava flows that can be quite proximal to the volcano, volcanic bombs that will target those that are climbing the mountain at the time. You can get lahars that are like mud flows that travel very long distances, and of course volcanic ash that can travel thousands of kilometers away from the volcano. And what's interesting is that we often focus on those very immediate hazards to a volcano erupting, but there's lots of secondary hazards that occur as a consequence, such as crop damage, famine, poisoning of livestock, and so on, which are very, very challenging. So we have different timescales of the impacts of volcanoes too. Now, the real thing that the volcano community have really managed to explore really well is this idea of how do we manage anticipation? And this is because of a thing called a pyroclastic flow, which I'm sure many of you know is one of the most deadliest forces on the face of the planet. And you can see in these pictures, it's basically where a volcano erupts very explosively. And at some point, there's not enough energy in the atmosphere to keep the plume going up into the atmosphere, and it collapses down the side of the volcano. And these travel at around 400 to 550 miles per hour. They're over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and they will kill you instantly, either through asphyxiation or being burnt alive. So it's not a very pleasant way to die, albeit very quick. So the challenge that volcanologists have is working with the local communities to evacuate people prior to the volcano erupting. Because once this volcano erupts, as you can see in this image, it will be seconds before that volcanic pyroclastic flow, as you can see in the bottom left image, will reach these people if it's going in that direction. So it's a real challenge because we need to evacuate people, and asking people to evacuate for something that may or may not happen. We're not sure when it's going to happen. We don't know quite how big it's going to be. is a really, really challenging thing, especially with something that doesn't happen often. Now, in this case of Mount Mayon in the Philippines, this is a really good example of where the local communities are very used to frequent eruptions from the volcano. They've developed a lot of cultural practices and norms and beliefs and oral traditions around the volcano, and therefore are actually very good at monitoring, self-monitoring the volcano, and being able to respond and respond to the signs that they're seeing and prepare for the volcanic eruption. So this is a really good example where communities are able to engage very closely with the volcano. But of course, volcanoes also change behavior. So this is the Eyjafjallajökull volcano in Iceland that erupted in 2010. And you can see on the left, it started off as a beautiful lava flow, and then quite rapidly, within a few weeks, changed into a very explosive volcano. And this created huge amounts of ash that covered the whole of Europe. So if we're thinking about volcanoes, again, here we have a complex situation where we've got to deal with not just the volcanologists, we've got to deal with the local communities, which have their local knowledge and understanding, which they have in Iceland, but also the Met Office, the meteorological agencies, and the pilots as well. So this was an amazing warning system that was set up between the pilots, the weather, the volcano observatory, satellite observations, and it just really shows how complicated the sort of stakeholder process can be for volcanic ash. And the volcano community have very successfully worked across these many different stakeholders that work in different silos. And so again, the volcano community has a huge wealth of knowledge, not just in terms of local practice, but sort of institutional arrangements for multi-hazards, which is really important to learn from. So they really help us think about how we might reframe multi-hazard early warning systems. That model, you can see that figure on the right there. I'm sure if you've got a bunch of volcanologists in a room, they could have a really good discussion about perhaps rethinking that model. But as I said, working across multiple hazards, but also volcanologists are very good at working at that community level in a very scientific way, in terms of actually trying to understand what the relationship is between the local community and their understanding of the hazards and the risks. And they've developed a huge range of public engagement and outreach activities that have been incredibly successful, as well as running a number of scenarios and exercises. And in fact, the volcano community runs an event every 2 years, a big conference that actually goes around the world and visits a city on a volcano and works with that local community, exchanging and sharing knowledge. And it leaves a lasting legacy of learning for all the different stakeholders involved, and from local communities right up to the scientists. And there's some really good examples, for example, with GNS, which has recently been merged in New Zealand, I think, for geosciences or earth sciences New Zealand. But they've had a history of working very closely with the Maori iwis and groups there in terms of trying to understand each other's knowledge bases, their background, and trying to bring together those two different types of scientific and indigenous knowledge in order to be better prepared and anticipate hazards and respond to that. And they have an official branch within their organization that works with various iwi tribes and communities, and they have programs set up in order to do that. And it's a really fascinating example of how scientific and traditional knowledge can work together. Volcanologists have also been really good at mapping, as you can see with this hazard map that sits on the back of toilets on the ski fields of Rupehu, to make sure that if there's a volcanic eruption or a lahar, that you can get to safety. And as part of that, as you can see in this image on the left here, there's a lot of work that's done with communities to map out their own environments and for people to say where they see the safe places, the risk places. And often, we hear about using maps, but actually many communities around the world struggle with using maps or photographs, and having a sort of 3D model where they can map out where they walk and how they move around is really important. And then on the right here, we've just got some photos from some of those exchange conferences that share insights. So really, to kind of bring this all together, it's really the volcano community has a huge wealth of experience of working in that top-down, bottom-up approach, from working across international, when we're talking about volcanic ash, levels of agencies, with the local communities and their understanding. And this is really important because part of that Sendai framework, Target G, and the Early Warning for All initiative is all about us thinking about multiple hazards and thinking about those events. So I think we really need to learn from the hazard that really deals with multi-hazards in a very complex way. So I finish with just a slide here about some of the resources that are available in terms of the volcanological community and what they have to offer, particularly this observing the volcano world. And I'll just leave with a very short story about misunderstanding. So in this book, there's a wonderful story based in, I think it's in Ecuador, and it's a wonderful example of where the scientists came in and they were trying to explain to the local community about pyroclastic flows. And the local community sort of said, well, why are the scientists talking about plastic coming out of the volcano? What are they talking about? They don't know what they're talking about. It's not plastic. And so it was a really good example of where language became a barrier and created a huge divide in the process of being able to actually work in the project that was going on and facilitate that communication. And thankfully, the person who wrote this story was a psychologist. And so she came in and on the behavioral cognitive side managed to get what became two very hostile groups to realize the misunderstandings between them and actually realize that they actually had a lot of knowledge to share. So it's a really good example there of how misunderstandings, even though they can be great and cause a lot of issues, can be overcome. And so there's lots more of those in that book that I just showed there. So thank you very much for my slot there, and I'll hand over back to you, Happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carina, highlighting the roles or contributions of the volcano communities to the early warning, early actions, and also showcasing the real on the ground example how scientists and community speaks different language, and that's also can create a misunderstanding. Yeah. For the participants, please post your questions in the chats, and then Karina can respond in the Q&A button. But later we will have the Q&A sessions where you can open your mic and speak. Thank you. So for the next speaker, thank you again, Karina. And for the next speaker, may I invite Mayford Di Luneta. Mayford has 25 years of experience in community-based disaster risk reductions and management. She is currently the Deputy Executive Director of the Center for Disaster Preparedness Foundations in the Philippines. Her passion is working with communities on CBDRRM and on community-led innovations. Mayford is an executive committee member of the Asian Disaster Reductions and Response Network, or ADRRN, and also involved in the different DRRN humanitarian works and advocacies in the local and regional and international level. Yeah, Mayford will share the case study on the effective community-based early warning system considering the FRICE. And yeah, Mayford, the floor is yours. I will share the presentations for you.
I sent a new one. Kindly look at the new one while I will start talking now because it's 10 minutes, right? Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. I will share with you what we have been using in Center for Disaster Preparedness in our journey of helping community-based early warning system be established in our partner communities. As we learned, it is very important to include both indigenous and scientific-based aspects in the early warning system. And so that is why I will share with you FRICE, okay? So don't worry, the fries has nothing to do with uh, the potato, but it's more of an acronym that would guide us in looking into it. So the objective of this session is, first, I would like to share the different examples of community-based early warning system for hydrometeorological hazards. Second is to explain the importance of considering the local indigenous knowledge, scientific evidence, and designing an effective learning system by the indigenous knowledge, scientific evidence, and the fries. Okay, so before going there to the fries, let's go first to what community-based early warning system is. Just okay, community-based early warning system, of course, provides um sorry community-based early warning system provides community members with the information they need to take early action for an upcoming hydrometeorological hazard. So it's a system wherein they would see the risks, they can analyze and forecast the hazards, and then also communicate the warning and alerts. And of course, they would also be able to see the local capacities to be used to respond. So that is those are the key elements. It should be in the community-based early warning system, and the one that should be designing it is the community themselves. This is the other end of the end-to-end early warning system. When you design national early warning system, it should of course go to the last mile, which is the community. So that's why the most important, I guess, for early warning system is the one that reach the community. That's why the community-based early warning system is very important. In drafting or designing the community-based early warning system, what are the things that we should look into? So as we see the yeah, so so the things that we should consider is the price. All right. Okay. The price. So what is the price? One more click. Yeah. Okay. The price is the flood marker, staff gauge, rain gauge, and rainfall intensity. I is for the indigenous knowledge. E is for the experience. S is for the storm signal. Actually, the fries this composed of usually you use scientific knowledge in doing your rain gauge, rainfall intensity, and also the storm signal. These are already generated by your government, making their own national early warning systems. But for the flood markers, indigenous knowledge, and also the experience, these are mostly, you can say, part of the indigenous knowledge that you should look into in making your community-based early warning system. So to make the long story short, usually when we do our early warning system in the communities, these are the things that the people look into after doing the risk assessment. The first thing that they would do is where is the lowest areas in the community, and where they can establish their flood markers, or by the river, the staff gauge. And of course, if they needed to have a rain gauge, which usually is in the local community school, and then of course the indigenous knowledge that they have already and experienced throughout their lives that can contribute to the warning system. And then of course the storm signal, because here in the Philippines it's very very vital that we consider that. So let's start with the letter F. Oh, sorry. Let's start with the letter F. Okay. So flood markers or staff gauge. Flood markers are those markers that you can see on the land, and while staff gauges usually is uh, defined by those by the water areas. So you can see at the left side, it's a flood marker from Mangin, Dagupan City, and the other side is from Banaba, San Mateo. A lot of materials have been written already on community-based early warning system for both, for Mangin and Banaba. And you can, of course, I put the last slide with some of the resources wherein you can look into the different resources now. These flood markers are was done long time ago, and most of them, as I have interviewed people lately, they have already updated these flood markers, but still they're using it because still very useful. Before, it is very useful because it is very easy to see by the people in the community. Filipinos in our culture, the things that you see is very convincing for us, so that that's why if you have flood markers and you have labeled them with colors and everything, it's easier for the people to follow and at the same time remind themselves of the danger that is coming. Now, it's easier also because before there used to be a monitoring person to go there, but now they use CCTV to use that. Okay, so that one, and of course, what we always suggest also, so the setting of the flood markers, it would be good that the community themselves would be the one to uh, identify where the flood marker should be. Of course, definitely, for technical persons, we suggest at the lowest point of the areas. But at the same time, it would also be good to where people can see it. So, and in community dialogues, in making up all these systems, it should be good that they will be the one to decide where to put it. And then, of course, the next part is the rain gauge. Uh, in some areas in the Philippines, we usually have for communities, we partner with schools so that the students will be the one to check on the rain gauge. So the culture of knowing how much water is needed for an alert level to be triggered is also a good practice for children as they grow up. So that's one thing. But in the national way, in the national sense, it's also good to know the national warning system for rainfall intensity. So we also have that. So if it in the television you hear that the area is already yellow or it's already red, it means that you have to prepare to evacuate, or mostly during the red part, the high risk areas should already be in the evacuation centers. So that's the rain gauge. Again, of course, this part should be understood also by our communities. We usually, in explaining scientific and national warning system, we try to localize and make the explanation very easy so that they would understand how it can be utilized and how it will go. I mean, how much water is it when you say it's the red thing or the orange thing. Now, let's go to indigenous knowledge. In the indigenous knowledge, I have a lot of examples. Let's start with the first, of course, let's think about the local indigenous knowledge and practices. It's not confined in the indigenous people alone. When you say indigenous knowledge, it doesn't mean that only the indigenous people has the knowledge, but it's any community. They can have the local indigenous knowledge as long as it's very local and it is being practiced by the community, whether it's rural or urban. Okay. Next is in early warning systems, the local indigenous knowledge that can be considered as basis for warning are the following. First is observing the environment. Some have observing animal behavior, the cloud formation, and the physical appearance, excuse me, and strength of the plants. And of course, the communities can also use indigenous materials in giving warning. And another is indigenous practices in early action are also crucial in community-based early warning system. So the indigenous knowledge and practices does not only give information as basis for early warning, but also for early action, and also they use for warning signals. So all of it can be looked into our indigenous knowledge. Okay. So next slide, please. Next slide. So I have a bunch of examples here. In Rapu-Rapu, wherein they use banana plants that has falling leaves and branches. Here, when they, for example, the banana branches or tamarind or santol, when they see the leaves fall in the ground, 2 days after, there would be rain. This such observation is made, and heavy rain and storm surges or strong winds will hit the community. What is the scientific basis for this? According to the local indigenous knowledge for community resilience, they say that usually, if there has been the temperature decreases, the plant's ability to make chlorophyll stops. So when it's being cold and a lot of rain, it's of course the temperature decreases. So in short, the leaves are tend to fall off the branches. So that for that in Rapu-Rapu in the community, they consider that as a warning for impending danger. Not even knowing the scientific explanation of it, but still using that as a warning, they prepare themselves to upcoming hazards or typhoon. Okay, so that's one indigenous knowledge. Another is in for is a bamboo, and it makes a sound to give warning to people. Culturally, they use striking the bamboo to show impending danger. Like for example, in the community, somebody is and for the people to sound that there's a thief running or something, they use the kanungkong traditionally. Now they use that experience to have to use it for the early warning system. So in the Gupan, it's in the next slide. Yeah, so use of kanungkong was used. Also, in this slide that you're seeing right now, that's another community wherein they use it for the next mile. They combine the early warning, the indigenous knowledge as well as the use of technology in making the early warning system, because in those areas we can always use the radio to go to the community and tell them to prepare. Okay, but in some areas there are already no signal that can receive the signal of the two-way radio. So those that cannot be reached, uh, will already be reached by the use of the traditional bamboo again. So this is in another area in Cebu. So again, using traditional knowledge in the early warning systems. Okay, next please. Next slide, please. So another is so we already have the use of indigenous knowledge. Another is the use of bayanihan. Bayanihan is culturally actually uh, very traditional in the community to help each other. So, in the early warning system, in the early actions that we usually say, these are being done by the community. So, the community volunteers do community kitchen in Banaba, while in Mangin, this one is very good because when the evacuation center is not enough already, the community members, some community members, which is more well off or less vulnerable, they adopt families that do not have spaces in evacuation centers, and while adopting them, that house already is considered as also a semi-evacuation center, wherein before, if you're not in the evacuation centers, they cannot receive relief from the government. But now, since they already combine the traditional bayanihan or helping each other together with their early action, so they already now make that houses that hosted families an official evacuation center. So they make memorandum of agreement with these families so that they can let people stay in their areas, and they will also be given relief. So that's already one good practice of combining the indigenous practices that they have into their early warning system. Now, when we go now to the experience, because we already have flood markers, the rain gauge, the indigenous knowledge. Now we go now to the experiences. Uh, let's look into what the communities experience during big typhoons and floods. In Barangay Banaba, they experienced the Ketsana, very big flood that came about. So in their experience, they experienced that the water level from one level to another in their flood markers is very fast. The usual was 1 hour, but now since they already have this standard, they now see that it's very fast because it's now 10 minutes only. So the water level is rising very fast, but because of their experience, that they incorporated that in their early warning system. So in the regular flood, they use this. But if the flood is too much, it means there would be a faster action for that. So also the color of the river stream from upstream can be basis of trigger. If it's brown and there's no rain and the downstream, but they see that the color of the water is brown, it means that the rain or the flood will come later because the rain is from the upstream. Okay. And then, of course, on the other hand, from the experience, you also adjust your early warning systems to make it more up to date. You see, in the early warning system, you should also update this once in a while, depending on how the situation improved in the area or not. Like for example, in Barangay Banaba, they now have a dike which protects them. So meaning before the water level should be like 19, it's already flooded in their areas. But now, because of the dike, they already have like 21 level of water. The water is still not coming. So the experience is very vital also, as part of the trigger in the areas of early warning system. And also, of course, as I've said a while ago, in the experience, it's also good to look into the complementation of what's new and what is old. Indigenous and traditional knowledge, combining it with technology is one good innovation and also helps you save a lot in other things. But let's just make sure in the technology side that it should be well understood and adapted by the community, because if not, then it will be a fail scenario. So that's it for the experience. And for the last part is the storm signal. Storm signal. Okay, next. The storm signal. In the Philippines, we usually only have like three storm signal. Typhoon signal number one, two, and three. But because now of the, most likely because of the climate risk, ours now has five typhoon signals. So it means that those we should also consider how many days, how many hours before the typhoon comes. This thing should also be considered in your community-based early warning system. Okay, so that's already the fries.
Yes.
So
Thank you,
view,
Mayford. And can you jump to the conclusions?
I am about to say the conclusion.
Thank
Um,
you.
Now, next part, please. So if you look into, just click on, okay. If you look at the different warning system, you would see also, please, next slide, please. Now that we are now promoting early action and anticipatory action, we realize that this this matrix is very helpful in doing this. Please, next slide, please, so that it's the summary already. Okay, so now you would see no, next, the slide before, please.
Si podemos ir a...
Just the slide before, and then I will stop there. Slide before. Okay, another. There. Okay, as you would see, that the green one. Sorry. Okay. So as you would see, before all the situations that I have shared with you, these should be considered in the situation, or which we now call triggers. Okay, which we now call triggers. And then, of course, there's another row telling about the impacts of those situations that will happen, whether the water is brown and things like that. And then, of course, the use of warning signals. You can use high-tech ones, text and everything, or indigenous ones. And then actions by the family, which we now call early actions, are already considered in this matrix. So both communities that we had before, and now we have a new community in different areas with our DKH projects. We have the Barangay Lamao Early Warning System for typhoon. This now is considering the anticipatory action. But as you can see in our stories that I have shared before, the use of rice is very useful also in the anticipatory action. So that's it. So to sum it up, I'm sorry for talking too much. I already tried to run as 300 words per minute. So the point is this. Let us all remember the combination of both indigenous and technological aspects is very important to cover all situation of triggers in the community. Second, early action of communities should consider existing indigenous practices to increase participation, for they are already part of the culture. Third, the use of indigenous knowledge and practices are usually practical and easy to understand and easy to do. So let's start with them. encourage the use of indigenous materials also because they are usually accessible and environment friendly. And last, the complementation of local indigenous knowledge and current technology can help the warning systems in our community easier to use and understand. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mayport. And our next speaker is going to be Miss Zeynep Sanduvac from Nirengi, Dernegi, Turkey. So Zeynep has over 20 years of experience specializing in conflict and disaster risk reduction, psychosocial support in emergencies, education in emergencies, child protection in emergencies, business continuity in emergencies, and strategic human resource management across national and international projects. She is the board member of Nirengi Association as well as GNDR's member in Turkey, and she is also Turkey's focal point for core humanitarian standards and an approved CHS trainer recognized by the CHS Alliance. So Zeynep is going to present from forecast to folklore, bridging science and local wisdom in Turkey's early warning systems. So I hand over to Zeynep. Zeynep, do you want me to share your presentation or you're good to share?
Yes, I will do. Thank you, Ipsda. Thank you. Now I am sharing my presentation. Yes. I think it's okay, right?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure talk with you about from scientific forecast to folklore, local wisdom today. So we will explore how blending science with local wisdom can strengthen disaster resilience. Let's go to the content. Yes. From early warning to cultural memory, community memory, this presentation is about choosing both, not either or. We will look at the real cases from different parts of Turkey, such as Kars, Rize, Denizli, based on the different. We will unpack why this approach is challenging but worth it and share what it means. What it means for trust, ownership, and future of Turkey. Let's dive in. Why this matters? Science and wisdom. So these two of them like two intersecting spheres, actually, right? On the one side, we have a forecasting model, and the other folklore indicators. So in the overlapping space, we find trusted, timely, and also encouraging early warnings. So because of this reason, we are not in a position for choosing one, to another, actually. So first case from Kars. Kars is from a northern eastern province of Turkey, of the Black side, Black Sea side, and also there is a border with Armenia. So we are seeing the shepherd and snow patterns. So snow patterns, wet snow, dry snow. On the other hand, I can say that this clue were included in the National Meteorological Directorate action, actually, so working with local community as well. So in Kars, the shepherds read snow like a daily and diary. So it means wet, dry layering warns of avalanche risk. its snows cover a certain branch on a tree. So the locals, the shepherds actually, they know to move livestock. As I mentioned to you, these clues were included in national methodological system, and which means the even silent trees can speak warning, and they warn us for saving life actually, if we hear them, if we look at them properly. And the other case is from Rize. Now on the stage there are frogs, hills, and rains. And Rize is again one of the Black Sea province, Black Sea region province. And we are seeing some clue from the anomalies actually. So in a kind of landslide warning, landslide warning comes through some smell, silence, and frogs. The villagers, the community, local community say when birds go quiet and hills start to sweat, it's time to move. So they are observing environment and they are immediately recognizing these signals. Again, in 2020, pairing this with satellite data helped to trigger early evacuations. And it was really interesting because local clues filled the blind spots of the machines. Also, there are some community wisdom, community clues, and also satellite and human observation and scientific data. But again, integration is important really, remotely using the silent scientific data and local inputs. And last example about the earthquake. From the Denizli, now we are going to the southern part of Aegean region of Turkey. So, of course, Turkey is earthquake-prone area, but in Denizli, there are some specific clues are being used by the locals, which means I think this is the internationally recognized one, dog barking, and other one, old clay oven, cracks on the old clay ovens, and murky water, well water actually. So earthquakes actually generally earthquakes defy easy prediction. It is still. On the other hand, in Denizli region, the community are observing the environment, and the dogs barks, of course, more, and wells shift, and cracks appear in the ovens. So if we use these as a proven, it will not be so realistic. On the other hand, the Turkey Disaster and Management Authority, AFAD local authorities, has started using this for local drills. They included in their scenarios. So because belief fuels action, we know this. And based on these examples, again, sorry. We are a position for merging scientific data and local wisdom and folklore. So, of course, scientists can be skeptical for the folklore and local clues. On the other hand, the mediation and feedback loops is needed for overcoming the scientific skepticism and overcoming the mistrust from the community as well. This is important because resilience and ownership. This is the main topic. So if we talk about the properly merging scientific data and the local knowledge, we can say actually, when people recognize their wisdom in warning, they listen. They act sooner accordingly with the authorities' instruction, probably, and recover faster in the end. This is fact. This also reduced alert fatigue, because internationally, again, we are knowing that people generally interpret the authorities' alarm like a generic. So somehow they are in position unrealistic, confident, there will not be anything to me. So this is not realistic, but they need to need to be heard with their readiness levels. So again, we can say most importantly, if we merge them properly, it shifts disaster response from for the people to with the people. So this is important. There are shared responsibility topic actually. As a conclusion, I can say this part, not science or folklore, both. We should hear both of them. And there are some conclusion, there are some takeaways. So these takeaways mentioned mostly from previous speakers as well, and the next speakers, I am sure they will also talk about this. But they are not rocket science, and we should hear, we should be sensitive to this. Smart forecast needs local insight. Data is powerful, but without contextualized, localized knowledge from local actors, predictions fall short. And trust is a sensor too. I like this as well. I mean, trust is a sensor too. So human trust, important. And hybrid system build ownership. Yeah. So scientific at one side and the community at one side, there should be a bridge to give a space both of them. And also challenges are real, but so are the solutions, especially for Turkey and countries like Turkey. There are complex issues and disaster-prone areas, actually. But proven models and innovation are already at work at the ground if we provide this opportunity. And again, this is Turkey's age and some other countries as well. A unique confluence of innovation, resilience, and geographical sensitivity position Turkey to lead adaptive system. So there are some deep dive community-based conversation, and authorities also are, and scientists also are understanding the importance of contextualized local community-based feedbacks and the clues. And again, last point I can say for this presentation, call to action, let's build together, because if we invest the hybrid systems, there will be not only save the lives, but to create systems that people believe in, understand, and act open. So these are the points from my side. Over to you, Ipstika. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zeynep, for that presentation and also for keeping time. Very, very useful. So our next presenter is Mohammad Maqsudur Rahman. He is an environmental activist and is one of the founder members of the chief executive officer of Bangladesh Environment and Development Society, BEDS. He has dedicated over a decade to advancing environmental sustainability, community development, and climate resilience in Bangladesh. Under his visionary leadership, BEDS has successfully implemented more than 60 projects focusing on environmental conservation, ecosystem restoration, disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, clean solar energy, sustainable livelihoods, environmental education, wildlife protection, health and sanitation, and gender development. His outstanding contributions have been recognized both nationally and internationally through the awards both he and BEDS have won over the past decade, most notably the UN Equator Prize for the successful implementation of the eco-village concept promoting sustainable community development. So, Makshudur is going to present an innovative approach for localizing early warning systems, a case study of the Sundarbans Eco Village. And shall I start with the video first, Makshudur bhai?
I would like to share the presentation first.
Sure. Okay. Please go ahead. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really proud to participate this event, and I understand how important this event today. Almost 122 participants now on board. So this is very important. And I understand in our previous presentation, we are always talking about the local disaster early warning system in knowledge and the scientific knowledge. So I think there is no option to ignore anything. So both of this knowledge is very important, how we can blending. And my presentation, I would like to share a simple case studies in our eco-village projects. So could you share my presentation? Okay. And
yes. Just give me a minute, but maybe you can start.
I can continue to talk, and
yes,
by this time, you can share this presentation. And the local early warning system, I think, who needs this information? When needs this information? How they can utilize this information? So this is very important question to all of us. So in our case, this Sundarbans Eco-Village initiatives, and one of the initiatives that local climate information service, and also the scientific knowledge, how we blending this. So before that, I am here on behalf of BEDS, Bangladesh Environment and Development Society. So I would like to introduce what is BEDS. Please next. So BEDS is a leading community-based environmental organizations, and BEDS is a local NGO, and we are working with the partnership in different countries, different organizations, and we have the partner in different countries like JEEP, Global Nature Fund, and Korea Green Foundation, and so on. And BEDS is also registered NGO in Bangladesh, and we have 39 general members, 63 full-time employees, and 7 executive committee members. And so far we implemented 62 projects, and 12 projects is going on. Next, please. And actually, the strategy of BEDS, how we work, basically, we are working with the community. We develop the partnership with the community. We work with the community. We respect the local knowledge, culture, and this is the strategy of BEDS. So next, please. I would like to going fast to the model that I would like to explain today. And these are the some of our achievements and recognition, especially the Equator Prize 2024. And this award we received due to our Sundarbans Eco-Village. And today I would like to share these Sundarbans Eco-Village initiatives, especially the case of the localized early warning system. Next, please. And the case that I try to explain today, and thanks again to giving this opportunity. And today I would like to share how a smart farmer can take a smart decision. And the case I would like to share, the farmer name is Sanjay Mondol. and he is 38 is, and he's a he's a local farmer. And actually, this initiative is under the Sundarbans Eco Village. So if you are interested more about the Sundarbans Eco Village, so you can go through this link and you will get more information regarding these initiatives. Next, please. Before that, I would like to introduce what is Eco Village. So Eco Village is a regenerating social and environmental, natural environment. And Eco Village is a model of social, cultural, economic, and ecological development by respecting the local and indigenous knowledge and culture. Next, please. And the Sundarbans Eco Village. This is an inclusive and sustainable future for all. This is the initiative that under this initiative, we are trying to increase the resilience capacity of the Sundarbans coastal community. And before that, I would like to share what is the Sundarbans. Sundarbans is the world's single largest mangrove forest, and which is declared by the UNESCO declared natural world heritage site, as well as the Ramsar wetland site. And beside the Sundarbans, people who are living in the area, the Sundarban coastal community. So we are working with this community. And there are a lot of the crises of this community. They are the crisis of the cyclone, flood, heat wave. So we are facing the multiple hazards. So many countries, they are facing single disasters, but we are facing multiple hazards. So how we can mitigate these hazards, how we can increase the capacity of the local people. So the local community, they have the knowledge, and the scientific community, they have the knowledge. So how we may blending this both knowledge and create a resilient society. Next, please. And the background, actually, I think it's almost similar in the Asian countries. The farmers mainly depends on the typical rainfalls and also the fresh water for their agricultural activities, and they're always depends on the season for their agricultural activities. But due to this climate change, this weather pattern is not functioning very well. It's changing. During the rainy season, there is no rain, and sometimes the over rainfall. So there are multiple problems the farmers are facing. But we have also the strong traditional or the local weather prediction information or system. Like many of our previous presenter already explained. Next, please. That some animals movements, some water movements, sky movements. So this is the all over the many of the countries. The peoples believe this weather prediction system, and especially the local communities, they believe when they saw the frog is calling before calling, and then they realize the rain is coming, and the ant moving fast, and also try to save the food for preserving food for the during the rainy time or the storm time. So there are many local knowledge that the local people believe, but this information always not functioning very well, and that's why we need this scientific knowledge together with this local knowledge. So if we able to blend this both knowledge, then I think we'll get a perfect weather forecasting, and the local people can easily understand. They can take the preparation. Next, please. So the case that I would like to share, actually this is very simple initiatives that we started since 2021 under a small initiatives which is supported by the Resilient Livelihood Award and funded by the SIDA and also administered by the GNDR. And actually this initiative, we focus how the local community can practice a local weather information service. And from my presentation at the beginning time, I explained that when the local people need the information, what kind of information they require, and how they can utilize this information. Of course, every country's there is a national forecasting system, but sometimes always not functioning very well that the requirement of the local people. So that's why I think sometimes this local system can functioning more effective and can get more relevant or effective results from such kind of the initiatives. So this is a good example that we already developed and established, and this is a low-cost system that we developed. Next, please. And this is a simple case that we try to develop the capacity of the local people on the ICT. Actually, every local people, they have the Android phone. They are using now the Facebooking, everything the people are doing. So next, please. And this is the system. This is our intervention. That there are many weather forecasting information you can get from the Google, but we realized the MetaVolu. This is a good software, and sometimes the prediction is almost correct. So that's why we introduced this MetaVolu software to the local people. And actually, our farmers, they are not literated. All of the peoples are not literated, so they can't read. So we try to develop the capacity how they can see the image and they can understand. And this is the system. The step one, we install this MetaVolu software, and step two, we also develop the capacity of the local farmers so they can easily understand to see the images and the 5 days or 14 days interval information, and then how to share this information and through the messenger group, and they can easily share. Some of the youth members of the farmers families, they are also doing Facebooking, so they can also supporting. So youth group also supporting these farmers. So you can see there is a messenger group we call the local weather clubs. So now this is very effective. This is very functioning. Every day, every time, people are sharing different corner of the Sundarbans area. What kind of the weather is coming, and even sometimes they're also sharing their local observation. Oh, they can see the sky is moving, they can see like this ant is moving. So this is the system that already practicing the scientific knowledge and the local knowledge. So this is very simple and low cost. So we can trying to increase these initiatives in whole Sundarbans areas. So we are trying to connect more people, so more people can easily get this information. Always also trying to connect the scientific community so they can share their scientific knowledge. So this is a very simple system that we are applying. We are practicing and increasing the resilience capacity, reducing the loss and damage of the local peoples. Next, please. And this is the intervention that how is functioning. The people's in the tea shop, tea stall, so they can discussing what is the next. And also the picture in the bottom, we are also trying to develop the capacity of the women groups also. So women can also play an important role for sharing this information to their family. Next, please. So this case already, this is one reference document that already published in the Global Resilience Partnership website. So you can see this information in details. So I'm not gonna to share the details information. Next, please. Maybe I finished. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And if it's okay, we can maybe show your video at the end. And our participants can stay back, so we can just move to the next part of this webinar, which is a panel discussion. And this will be moderated by Mr. Gavin Wright. So Gavin is the thematic lead for partnerships and marketplace at the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership, REAP, responsible for supporting the partnership's early action partners to promote and exchange innovative anticipatory action solutions across the climate, humanitarian, and development communities. Prior to this position, Gavin spent much of his career with the Red Cross movement, coordinating responses to disasters, designing humanitarian guidance documents, and training teams on the ground. As a consultant, he has also conducted evaluations of international aid operations and drafted responder curricula. He has a particular passion for humanitarian partnership models and helped launch the World Economic Forum's Disaster Resource Partnership and the IFRC's 1 Billion Coalition Initiative. So over to you, Gavin. You seem to have the task of trying to wrap up the panel, if possible, in 20 minutes. So thank you very much, and I hand over to you now.
Thank you so much, Ipsita. That's a big task, but I think it's also been a very interesting discussion. So I want to change a bit the flow and the dynamic right here, because ideally we'd like also to get our participants to continue to ask questions. I think it's been good to use that space. So please continue doing that. I think that the presenters can also continue to answer that way. I'm more going to try to extract from these presentations maybe one or two things that I think have been particularly critical, but I wanted to come from the presenters themselves. So what I'm thinking is, if we look back at some of the things that were mentioned, there are different ways in which we're trying to bridge the gap across different communities, right? We have the indigenous knowledge, we have the scientific knowledge, but it's not always able to connect. And we've gotten great connections, great presentations just now. So what I'll do is I'll just do a quick round with a quick response from each of our presenters. What I want for them is to kind of help us to understand in a concrete way, what does all this mean for us when we're trying to implement a lot of the early warning systems. So just I'll also flag maybe something that I think is helpful for this discussion, just taking advantage of the space here, because we've had a lot of good discussions as part of the REAP Early Warning Initiatives working group. So I'll make sure that I share some of the results of their own working group there as well. But I also wanted to mention that there is an opportunity for people who are a member of the GNDR network to go to access all the REAP resources. Make sure that you can use those resources. There's a lot of resources out there. So please take advantage of all the resources. I'll make sure to share those in there. So just to go back, I want to maybe just ask maybe Mohammed Maksudur first, and then maybe go to Mayforth and Carina, and then maybe finish with Zeynep. And the questions are going to be quite similar, but from a slightly different angle. The first question I want for Maksudur is going to be very much around, like you mentioned, that frog vocalizations can help to forecast rain. And we know that indigenous knowledge to a large level is qualitative. It's rooted in the oral traditions. It's how people share information from one person to the next. Sometimes it doesn't work with the science side because we don't necessarily have the scientific validity embedded into that. So my first question will be very much to look at what are the elements that you think that scientists should do to factor in indigenous knowledge. So you mentioned the frogs. I think the frogs is a perfect example. There are all these ways that we know that something's going to happen, but somehow it's not considered as like necessarily serious information. So what would you say, Maksudur, is my first question to you, and a very quick answer, because again, we want to make sure we have time for all this, but just in a minute or two, some of the key things you think that scientists should do to take this information more seriously.
So thank you, Gavin, for your excellent question. So I just directly go to your answer of your question. So before that, I would like to just add some more information. Now the scientific the information, the prediction, actually the weather always we are predicting. This is not the rocket science that that will be happen perfectly or 100%. So this is the big issue of the local people. Sometimes the weather forecast mention that tomorrow it will rain. Tomorrow the good sunshine. So actually, it's not happening every time. So trust building is very important. So local people are sometimes really worried about this scientific information. So if you compare this scientific information and these animal movements, especially the frog and other movements, if you observe, so sometimes it's accurate. this is my observation, and so this is my local experience, that the frog prediction and the scientist prediction, if you compare, I think the frog prediction is always perfect. This is my very quick answer.
Thanks for keeping it quick. I think that's just what I was trying to. I want you to reemphasize some of the key messages that you've already told our audience, but I think there is so much information. It's good to reemphasize some of these key points. I'll do the same thing now and just see if I can get maybe a perspective on the flip side. I think there's also some stuff that maybe we want the holders of indigenous and local knowledge to factor in science as well. I mean, it's a two-way discussion. So maybe that first question, the next question, I'll go to Carina, who has a long academic experience and knows how sometimes we do have a lot of scientific elements that we do want to kind of factor in. So how, when we're trying to attempt to harmonize these two ways of thinking and of seeing the world, what would be for you, Carina, the way to make sure that these holders of indigenous knowledge are able to take advantage of the progress of science? And again, this is off the bat, so I'm just putting you on the spot here.
No, that's fine. Yeah, great question. It is a two-way process, and obviously there are limitations sometimes in terms of certain indigenous groups that want to retain some of their knowledge and not share that, and that's okay. And equally, some of the scientific knowledge might be a bit over the top. So there's constraints on both sides, but I think it's finding that sweet spot in between, and the way to gain that is to work together through dialogue and understanding and working through those challenges, as through the pyroplastic example that I gave earlier. So I think having structured plans that you can put in place that facilitate meetings, regular meetings and dialogues within local communities, taking on their guidance and their understandings, and then also like the role of citizen science, so like enabling local leaders, for example, or representatives to be part of the monitoring scientific process is really important. That works really well in Indonesia, and it gives that sense of ownership, responsibility, and also expertise locally, so that if communications go down, there is the knowledge and the skill base to understand what's going on locally. So I think it's a case of like sharing beyond the borders of comfort on both sides, and swapping some of the roles to create that overlap, I think is really key to the success of that two-way communication.
Yes, and I've been noticing the comments that we have to slow down when we're speaking. So I think for Karina and myself, we'll have to make an effort, because I know for the interpreters it can be very challenging. So we'll do our best here in the time we have left. I want to now turn to Mayforth with her very detailed presentation with just a general similar question about how can we make sure that all this wealth of information from the science side is really understood by the indigenous knowledge holders and vice versa. So Mayforth, in a few words, could you maybe share some of your thoughts about this working across different communities and how you see that's going forward? Thanks.
I agree with both of the speakers a while ago, but I think one key suggestion would be for the scientists to go into the community and learn from what they have already. Start with the indigenous knowledge that the people in the community have, and also build on researches on the indigenous knowledge that is existing in the community. And then from there, build on whatever would mix and match with the scientific data they already have. I think there's a lot of cross that can be crossed out together if they first and foremost go to the community, understand more of what is needed in the community, and be able to also help the community understand technical terms, because they might have all the information that the community need. It's just that it's so hard to understand. So maybe if they go down and learn more, stay there. I think that's one very good practical suggestion for our scientists. But at the same time, for our community people also, try to share what they have in the what, and try to learn more of what the new things are I remember that we have using technology in the office would be very hard, but it will still be very hard if you do not start. So we should continue to also open up and start with what is new nowadays. Thank you very much.
We're getting a bit of a consensus in all the different responses about them. I think you just said May 4th as mix and match. I think it is about having the redundancy, knowing that we have this set information, the other, they're both valid, but they provide different angles on the issue. And I think someone put in the comments as well, like the frogs may be accurate. Do we trust it more than the science, or is it just combining the two and looking what can we get from the frogs, what can we get from the maybe satellite forecasts, and combine the two together? I'm going to, for the last question for Zeynep, I want to kind of bounce back on something that she said as part of her presentation, which is that trust is a sensor too. I thought that was a very good summary to say that actually it is about getting the trust across these communities of practice, which is critical. Because we know that for the indigenous knowledge to be effectively incorporated, we must have a trust that actually doesn't come up of someone's wild imagination, but is actually based on sometimes centuries of actual practice and understanding how these things feed together. So my question for Zeynep is very much if she has any thoughts about how scientists and the holders of indigenous knowledge can learn from each other. How can we build that trust? If you have any thought about that, because you've really emphasized the importance of trust, how can we trust each other's way of thinking and know that it's equally valid? Over to you, Zeynep. You're on mute. Now it's better.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, thank you for giving this pass to me, especially trust is a sensor, right? I liked it. Actually, we have a really good tool preparing risk mapping with the communities. So it is a kind of technical but also practical. Scientists if go to the community and head to head at the field, at any informal environment, some drinking tea, having coffee, and some small talks. So if we prepare a risk mapping based on the disaster or any topic, challenging topic community, they are so ready for sharing their knowledge. And also they are ready for learning from the scientists as well. We are experienced this a lot. So because of this reason, scientists has digital tools. Also community has smartphones. Also they have a chance for creating co-creation digital community risk mapping. For instance, from the field worker perspective, always I am a position for giving some suggestion, useful suggestion. Anyway, so based on this, if we create some risk mapping with them, we can learn we can build the trust and then learn the community's readiness level and their knowledge, local knowledge. So which means turning passive receivers into the proactive risk informants. Yeah, so this is my point.
Yeah, thanks. And that's also a key message about how do we make sure that when we're talking about this trust, it's about making sure that we acknowledge that people have a whole series of data sources around them, indigenous knowledge, but also with their friends, tell them, and so forth. And that's how they build their construct of what they should take action at their local level, and then making sure that it's relevant for them. So I think making people active members of this process is the key message here. So again, this was just a very quick question and answer session, just to kind of make sure that we're able to extract some of the key ways in which we're not seeing indigenous knowledge and science as separate, but actually needing each other for it to function better, and make sure that people at the local level see that their own instinct, traditions, and so forth are valued and perceived as such by the scientists, and that they can work together on that. So I'll hand back to my GNDR colleagues, because I know there's a few closing remarks on their side. So again, thanks for bearing with me in these very quick questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gavin, and also for the time management. So I would like to request Shivangi to maybe if you could quickly present to us, as shared by Happy earlier, that GNDR has written a global report on localizing early warnings, and what does that report specifically talk about indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge and the collaboration between the two. So I hand over to you for your presentation on that.
Yeah, thanks, Ipshita, and hi everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's when you're speaking at this stage, I think almost everything is covered, which is fantastic, I would say, and it also aligns with the global findings. Let me just share my presentation and then we can move to that. No. Give me a second, please. Here we go. Just if you can confirm if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, but not on. Yeah, now we can see.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I'm not going to go through each and every finding of GNDR's global report on localized finding, but I have aligned myself to stick to the subject today about collaboration between scientific forecasting and local wisdom for early warning system. This is already mentioned that we had a global survey of more than 400 organizations across 88 countries, followed by national workshops, which had in-depth discussion on all that what we have been talking. Some of the presenters here were part of those workshops and have already inputted in that. And then we had global seminar, further kind of drilling into kind of, what are those elements which support the localized early warning systems. And of course, the larger goal through this intervention that we were doing was to enhance CSO's participation and engagement in localization of early warning systems that you all are working on. Why blend scientific forecasting with local wisdom? This is just emphasizing some of the points made by earlier speakers. Scientific forecasts offer early quantifiable hazard projections close to where we are. There's a debate that I see already happening on that. And the local and indigenous knowledge provides context-specific signals and trusted interpretation, primarily by the communities who have been practicing this for a very, very long time. Why we want to collaborate this to both scientific forecasting and local wisdom is to integrate both for enhancing our reach, relevance, and uptake of alerts. And this whole aspect of localizing early warning systems is what MEFO said, that bring the scientists to the communities to be able to understand also what are those indigenous knowledge which is there with the communities, try to integrate both of them to enhance it, to try to reduce the impact of disasters in the disaster prone areas. So that's the simple way of putting why we want to blend scientific knowledge. Coming to the study, these are some of the aspects that I picked up today for towards the session that what we have. And one of the speakers did mention about this, that we have very less participation or active participation of communities. If it goes very technical, some of those community members are just mere recipient of the information. They are not the actors. And we would like to see more active participation from communities to take the ownership of the actions that they take based on the information that they interpret. And therefore it's important that we skew it more towards making them active participant. We also found that marginalized groups, especially women, persons with disabilities, are often excluded from decision making and timely alerts. So it's just not about giving those alerts, but it's also about making those alerts relevant for these groups, like especially with persons with disabilities,
who often are excluded from the decision-making process, but also they do not have access both to the resources and information. And the last one is about feedback mechanisms, which are very, very limited. We do not really kind of go back for the review of whether the localized early warning systems work, did not work, etc. So this were some of the key gaps which were identified by our study. Now, why do we want this collaboration between the scientists and the local communities, or between the science and the local indigenous knowledge? It's more accurate detection, combining scientific lead times with local indicators. As you see in the picture, it's very, very simple rain gauge that have been put, but it's scientific. It's like, you know how many meters of water or what is the level of inundation that's going to take place. So we require that kind of more accurate detection, more quantifiable detection for the decision makers to take actions. We also want greater inclusion. We want people to understand this. We want marginalized communities and voices to be heard and benefit from these warnings. And it's about stronger trust. This has been mentioned in this last 1 hour, many times, that it's about building those trust, and communities should have are more likely to act on warnings that they helped shape it. And then bringing the science to that would also kind of, make it more and more accurate, as I mentioned earlier. What are the principles that have come, I think, in many deliberations that happened during this particular, intervention that we have been doing? We have been talking about inclusive community involvement in design and governance of early warning systems. Almost all the speakers kind of emphasized on that. Use of locally meaningful communication formats, pictures, local languages, trusted messengers. And I would also add that, let's be mindful of people with disabilities, because not necessarily everybody would have access to that information, because they require different kinds of communication methods that we need to be mindful about. And recognition and integration of indigenous knowledge in forecasting systems, same thing, bringing science to the local level. So these are some of the key principles of collaboration. And I think this is nothing new, because this is all about localization that we have been talking about, that how do you collaborate, how do you bring people together, different stakeholders together, how those partnerships are built. And it's same for also localized early warning systems. Now, based on GNDR survey, some of the success enablers are, of course, building local capacity of community volunteers, the task force members that we have been talking about, the local leadership that we have, the CSO leadership we have, local scientists we have. We need to try and sit together to enhance this capacity and make an enabling environment for localized early warning systems to be effective. Invest in forecast-based financing at local level, resources, time, commitment for anticipatory actions, and then partner across levels. Bring CSOs, meteorological services, national policy, local governance. Across the levels, you need to kind of, build in. And across the levels, you also need to kind of recognize the importance of the indigenous knowledge, and how do we kind of, collaborate it with the science. However, there are some challenges in this integration, or as I said, bridging epistemic differences between scientific models and local knowledge. There is still that difference. They are still working in silos. They are not together. We need to also understand that there is the requirement of this technical capacity to translate local indicators, which some of you were talking about, the animal behavior or plant growth, into some kind of, clear rules that computers or early warning systems can understand and act on automatically. How do we do it? This is still an area that we require to kind of work on, but it is required that, we try to kind of, make an algorithm or something, some system that supports or that takes into account those local indicators that we have been talking about. Of course, we also see that there is a weak governance coordination, and we think that while we are talking about working across the levels, we are still working in silos. We need to be. I mean, this is the point that every time we talk about that we are working in silos, but it is still it is still the same. The problem still lies in that, and then we need to realize that across the levels, how do we kind of integrate, coordinate, collaborate together with different actors to make this happen. What are the opportunities? I mean, at GNDR, we are going to start with a program on landslide detection, which is early warning for landslides, and we are trying to co-design triggers and thresholds, co-develop forecasting tools with the communities. We are bringing science there. We are bringing experts on landslide detection. We are trying to bring them closer to the local knowledge and try to work on that. Through that project, we would also kind of build local capacities of our CSOs, volunteers, and of course local scientists to bridge those knowledge systems. And the larger idea is as a network that we would like to scale it up more and more through our partnership amongst the CSOs, government, UN agencies, and donors and other partners that we are working with. So we are seeing that next 6 months is going to be very interesting, and this webinar actually aligns more and more of what we are going to do, the how part of it in coming months. Summary and key takeaways, I would say that hybrid approach maximize timeliness while grounding warnings in local context and trust. GNDR's findings emphasize the importance of inclusivity, trust, and governance, and path forward is to integrate, iterate, institutionalize, and ensure that the most vulnerable are heard and protected. So with this, I would end my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shivangi. And yes, we are not very much over time. So, and it's wonderful to see most of you all have stayed with us throughout the webinar. So we will just take a few more minutes and I will hand over to Marcus to give us the word of thanks. Over to you, Marcus.
Thank you, Psita. And yeah, I don't want to take much time from you guys. I just wanted to thank you very much. More, about 120 people I took some notes, probably about 28 countries, from 28 countries. So that's amazing, the level of participation and engagement. Thank you very much. All the panelists and the speakers, of course, Vladislav, Carina, Mayforth, Zeynep and Max Sudur. It's been great to listen to from you, from your experience, all the beautiful cases from the very front line, and thank you, Gavin, for leading the discussion. This partnership with all of you guys is really, really insightful, and this is what the Local Leadership Academy is about. It's about learning from each other. We do believe at GNDR in collaboration, especially South to South collaboration, and these webinars are about this. Let's keep the conversation on. That's the idea, to bring us together, to learn from each other, to keep the conversation, and to keep strengthening our capacities. We all agree that the capacities are over there, the experience, the knowledge is over there at local level. We need to strengthen those capacities. And again, just thank you all. We, as you know, we shared with you the Local Leadership Academy survey to try to understand those topics that you would like to hear about or you would like to share. And that's why we had this beautiful webinar today about collaboration between scientific forecasting and local wisdom in early warning action. But many other topics will come up. We will have about 3-4 webinars each quarter. And again, that will happen thanks to you and your generosity in sharing your experience. Anyway, just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Psita. Thank you, Happy, for organizing this beautiful webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. And so we will see you for our next webinar in the next quarter. Thank you for joining us.